Neon reflections rippled across the rain-soaked pavement as thunder rumbled far overhead, the deep growl echoing through narrow alleys and vacant rooftops. At the very heart of the metropolis, a colossal billboard towered atop the highest building, bathing the dark streets below in a shifting kaleidoscope of colored light. Most nights, its constant flicker simply advertised popular brands and upcoming events, but on this particular evening, the angles of the digital images warped strangely, swirling in a mesmerizing vortex before settling on a single glowing figure. In most cities, people would have passed it off as a glitch or a new advertising gimmick. Yet here, in the hush of a looming storm, something truly extraordinary was stirring. On the sidewalk 6 stories below, Celia Reeds fumbled with her umbrella, too distracted by her own tired thoughts to glance upward at the display. She had just finished a long shift at the local paper, where dire headlines about economic downturns, rising crime, and an incoming superstorm weighed heavily. Her feet ached from standing all day, her eyes burned from the fluorescent lighting in the office, and all she wanted was to get home. A gust of wind forced her to fight the collapsing ribs of her umbrella, and she stumbled to the side, nearly colliding with a puddle. Irritated, she turned toward the building that housed the billboard, hoping to steady herself against the stone facade. Only then did her gaze travel upward, and what she saw made her breath catch in her throat. The billboard's usual dancing graphics were gone, replaced by a solitary figure of pure white fire. Its edges shimmered with streaming sparks that cascaded down, and despite the heavy rain, those sparks glowed bright against the gloom. The being's features were difficult to decipher, but it extended one arm toward the city, as though beckoning. Celia felt an unexplainable heat radiate down upon her, searing through her drenched coat and prickling at her very core. The rolling thunder seemed to pause in that singular moment, as though waiting for whatever happened next. Before Celia could consider running or calling for help, the figure moved. As though it had spotted her among the crowd of people hurrying by, another bolt of lightning slashed across the sky, illuminating the 6 others who also gaped at the billboard. Celia realized with a cold shiver that most people simply marched on, umbrellas up, heads bowed, oblivious to the light show above. Only those few watchers, including her, stood there, transfixed. The spirit raised its arm, and all at once the billboard erupted into a cascading waterfall of gold lumen. Celia's heart pounded. The golden rain spilled off the edges of the digital screen and did something impossible. It came to rest in mid-air. Slowly, it formed into a shape that shimmered and coalesced in the open space before the building. Standing just about 8 feet tall, the spirit stretched out with shimmering arms, as if testing the realm it had just entered. At that moment, everything else receded. The roar of the city, the drumming of rain, even the flicker of traffic lights down the road, all Celia perceived was that radiant form. She couldn't decide whether to be awed or terrified. A hush fell around the small group of onlookers. Then the spirit, as if noticing their silent astonishment, lowered its head in gentle greeting. Its voice, when it spoke, thrummed through the air like distant bells. "You have seen me," it said, addressing them in a tone that Celia felt more than heard. "That means you stand at the threshold of a great choice. The fate of this city, perhaps the world, hinges on the path we take tonight." Celia opened her mouth, but no words came out. She watched as a man in a drenched business suit shuffled forward. "What do you mean?" he asked, voice shaking. Others nodded, warily echoing his question with their eyes. The spirit's gaze, glowing with an uncanny warmth, flicked between them, as if gauging their readiness. Thunder rolled again, faint in the distance. "Darkness accumulates in corners untended," it said, gestures as fluid as its luminous form. "Suffering, neglect, and hopelessness have settled into the heart of this city. Now, something ancient stirs. It feeds on despair. The wave of destruction brewing outside your oblivious windows is not merely a storm. It is a catalyst for what lurks beneath every city's facade. If we do nothing, everything collapses. Celia's stomach twisted. She felt the spirit's voice resonating in her mind, conjuring images of swirling winds, black water consuming skyscrapers, and citizens floating in an endless sea of ruin. She tried to shut her eyes to chase the visions away, but she could still see them. Its presence was inescapable, and behind the scenes, she sensed that it was weaving a bond between the watchers. "What are we supposed to do about this?" breathed another person, a teenage girl wearing headphones around her neck. Her eyes were wide with something like hope, or maybe fear laced with curiosity. The spirit drifted closer, the hum of its power filling the air. "I emerged now because the time has come. Billboards broadcast illusions, but I can broadcast truth. The synergy of this screen and others in this city holds a unique magic. With it, I can show the unseeing crowds what they have forgotten, the need to unite and fight for their home. But you, the ones who saw me first, must help guide them. I cannot do this alone." Celia wrestled with a torrent of emotion. Something about the spirit's words rang powerfully true. The city had felt heavier lately, as if on the verge of a great collapse. Yet she couldn't dismiss that this was also absolutely fantastic, some luminous being stepping out of a giant advertisement. She looked around. The half-dozen watchers caught each other's eyes, as if silently corroborating that yes, this was really happening. The business-suited man, whose name Celia overheard was Glenn, took a shaky step forward. "Show us what to do," he pleaded. The spirit nodded, its glow pulsing with approval. "First, you must spread this message. Go to those who hold influence. Community leaders, media outlets, elders, anyone who can gather a crowd. I will appear on the city's digital billboards, one by one, until the masses can sense the urgency. We must rally them to a single vantage point, a place high enough that they can see the approaching doom with their own eyes. Only then will they understand. Only then will they join the fight to stop it." Celia thought about the newspaper office. She worked in the editorial department, not exactly top of the hierarchy, but she had connections to her boss, to the photographers, maybe enough to spread something like this. "I'll try," she said, though she had no idea how she'd phrase it. "A luminous angel from a billboard told me to warn everyone we're doomed?" The city had faced enough bizarre news. Most people were in no mood for a doomsday prophecy. But the spirit's presence banished her doubts with a quiet certainty. The moment they agreed to help, a swirl of light flickered around them. Celia felt a jolt of energy, like an electric current dancing just beneath her skin. The teenage girl gasped. Glenn's face lit with astonishment. "What? What was that?" "A blessing," the spirit replied softly. "A fragment of my essence, imparted to each of you. It will help guide your hearts to truth. When the time comes, you will feel a pull. Follow it. That is where you will be needed most." With that, the spirit drifted back toward the billboard, merging into the screen like ink dissolving in water. The giant display flared one final time, then the usual ads popped back into rotation. The winds kicked in, scattering droplets in every direction, and the watchers stood in stunned silence. Over the next few days, Celia felt as though she lived in two different realities. The normal daily grind continued. She filed articles, answered phone calls, and endured glares from her editor whenever she broached the topic of a monstrous storm. They had heard about the projected superstorm, yes, but nothing in the official meteorological reports suggested an apocalypse. Co-workers rolled their eyes whenever Celia tried to push the story of an otherworldly spirit. Still, she'd drawn up everything she could recall from that night. The swirling golden apparition, the catastrophic visions. She even wrote an op-ed piece urging people to gather at the city's highest vantage point. The editorial board politely shot it down. On the third evening, thunderclouds darkened the city once more. A swirl of ominous funnels formed on the horizon. The local news network started using words like unprecedented storm front, and historic weather event. Yet it wasn't enough to prompt mass alarm. People were jaded. They had heard cataclysmic predictions before. That same night, Celia walked her usual route home, steeling herself against the howling wind. She paused under the same billboard from days prior and scanned it for hints of the spirit. The colors whirled, advertisement after advertisement, until at last a faint glow appeared, a ghostly flicker in the corner of the screen. She hoped it was a sign that the next move was imminent. At dawn, the city awoke to find every major digital billboard replaced with the spirit's radiant visage. Downtown, midtown, even near the harbor, anywhere a towering screen promised to capture attention, the luminous figure of Whitefire manifested. Commuters stared in shock and wonder. Some cheered, others cowered, while a few loyal cynics insisted it must be an elaborate marketing stunt. But the static-laced voice that began speaking to them, broadcast through speakers or through the screen alone, made them pause. "My people," the being intoned, "our city stands on the brink. You have felt the winds, seen the darkness gathering. Now is your chance to stand together. Come to the tallest rooftop in the city. There we will make our stand against the storm." Social media exploded. Rumors circulated of a hoax, a glitch, an alien invasion. City authorities scrambled to shut down the hijacked billboards, only to discover that every attempt to override the feed failed. Meanwhile, the spirit's message continued broadcasting in a loop, accompanied by ghostly images, twisted cyclones, floodwaters raging through streets, and an ominous silhouette with red eyes rising out of swirling clouds. Menacing yet compelling, it stirred something deep within many watchers. They recalled the sense of community that felt so absent in recent times. They wondered if, perhaps, there truly was a threat beyond a typical storm. Celia's editor demanded she go on site to cover this unprecedented phenomenon. Eagerly, she agreed. Armed with a voice recorder and a press badge, she hastened to the designated building, the city's iconic Crown Tower, which soared 70 stories high. By noon, a swelling crowd filled the streets around it, though people remained hesitant to enter the building. Officials tried to blockade the entrance, proclaiming the rooftop was unsafe. Yet more and more citizens gathered, forming a human sea of curious gazers. The spirit's billboard face kept urging them on. "Come to Crown Tower, witness the truth, unite as one." In the course of all this, Celia reunited with Glenn. He was standing near a barricade, speaking fervently with a police officer. The teenager from that night had also shown up, leaning against a lamppost, earphones blaring. To Celia's surprise, not only the original few watchers, but many others had arrived. Charity organizers, community activists, even some local musicians. Each one wore a determined expression, seemingly bolstered by that same intangible spark they had felt from the spirit. Celia felt her chest swell with a mixture of apprehension and resolve. She urged the policeman to let them pass, at least to document the phenomenon from up high. Their arguments were convincing enough. Or perhaps the policeman felt the same pull of the spirit's summons. He sighed and removed the barricade. Inside the tower, the group crowded into the elevator banks, climbing as high as it would go. Up and up they ascended, pressing themselves against the metal rails when the compartments jostled. A wave of breathless tension descended. Eventually, they reached the observation floor. There, they had to clamber up several flights of narrow stairs to access the rooftop itself. One by one, they emerged into a wind-whipped open space, battered by swirling gusts so powerful that Celia gasped for air. The scene atop the tower was surreal. The city sprawled out in all directions, skyscrapers peaking above the gloom, while black clouds twisted overhead in a menacing dance. The air felt charged with static, every hair on Celia's arms standing upright. She saw that the spirit was waiting near the edge of the roof, an incandescent silhouette that flared in and out with each flash of lightning. As more people joined them, the spirit's voice reverberated across the rooftop, echoing from the swirling tempest. "Look upon what approaches," it commanded. And from the roiling clouds, something began to take shape. A vast, serpentine shadow shifting through the storm. Each flash of lightning revealed a bit more detail. Glowing crimson eyes and a cavernous maw. It roared with the wind, a sound that rattled the steel beams beneath their feet. Shrieks of terror erupted. Some people stumbled backwards, nearly tumbling down the rooftop access, but the spirit held its position, a beacon of white flame. "This is the devourer of fear," it intoned aloud. "Every heartbreak, every moment of despair you harbored in your hearts, this thing festered and grew. Now it threatens to swallow the city whole. You must not succumb. You must fight. Channel your hope. Call upon your unity. This is how we banish the darkness." Instantly, arguments broke out among some of the onlookers. They protested that this was beyond mortal power, that no amount of cheerleading could dispel a literal monster in the clouds. Celia, fear coursing through her veins, looked at Glenn. She remembered the electric spark the spirit had given them that first night. Could that spark really stand up against something so enormous? Summoning courage, she strode forward. "We have to try," she shouted above the roar of the wind. "Remember that jolt? That was real. Don't ignore it. Let's trust that what we do next can save us." Her words echoed across the rooftop, and, to her relief, people began to gather closer rather than scatter. The teenager nodded, glancing at her headphones, then clutched them as if they were a talisman and stepped next to Celia. The spirit lifted both arms, and a brilliant swirl of energy crackled around it, forming loops in the air. "Open your hearts," it urged. "Hold on to the memory of community, of kindness, of love. These are weapons stronger than any blade." More people joined Celia, forming a ring around the spirit. Glenn grabbed Celia's hand, passing it on to the teenage girl, who, in turn, passed the link down the line. One by one, everyone on that rooftop joined hands, forging a human chain in defiance of the raging storm. From the swirling clouds, the beast roared again, lashing out with spindly tendrils of darkness that clawed at the edges of the roof. The tower lurched, as if battered by physical force. Yet each time the darkness tried to worm its way into the ring of humans, the spirit's white gold radiance flared, forcing it back. The tension in the air crackled. Celia's heart thundered in her chest. She channeled every cherished memory she had, the aroma of her mother's cooking, the warmth of her father's laugh, the supportive words from her best friend when she'd been at her lowest. Tiny tears pricked her eyes, and a glow started emanating from her chest, traveling down her arms to where she held her companion's hands. Others likewise began to glow, their regrets, hatred, and miseries transmuted into something fierce and bright. The entire chain of people took on a soft luminescence, as if they were fueling the spirit with their collective hope. The storm beast writhed overhead, flapping intangible wings against the swirling clouds. Its roar became a shrill keen, and Celia saw wind-lashed phantoms swirl in its eyes. Old resentments, tragedies unacknowledged. It thrashed wildly, tearing chunks of cloud apart. Then the spirit lifted its head to meet the beast's gaze. "You do not belong here," it said in a voice that rolled across the city like a clarion. "You prey on sorrow, but we have chosen hope. Be banished." At that final word, a lightning bolt arced from the roiling darkness straight toward the rooftop. Celia's breath caught. This was it, the storm's final blow. But the chain of humanity, hand in hand, channeled an even greater energy upward. A searing column of light burst from them, wrapping around the lightning bolt and repelling it back into the sky. A detonation of brilliant white erupted in the storm's core. For a moment, Celia was blinded, stumbling backward. She clutched the hands of her neighbors to avoid falling. Thunder boomed so loudly it rattled her teeth, then abruptly cut off. A deafening silence followed as the black clouds tore away, revealing patches of silver sky. Where the monstrous shadow had been, only faint wisps remained, dissolving into thin air. The wind settled, no longer howling with fury, and at the center of the rooftop, the spirit stood, glowing steadily. It surveyed the circle of people, and an unmistakable sense of relief emanated from it. Slowly the crowd began to cheer, softly at first but rising to a collective roar. Tears streamed down faces, strangers embraced. The once skeptical policeman watched from the rooftop entrance, quietly saluting as if acknowledging his own wonder. Celia felt warmth spread through her entire body. On the horizon, glimpses of pale sunshine broke through, illuminating the city in a calm light. In the distance, one could see the usual bustle returning, people peeking out from doorways, windows and balconies, uncertain yet hopeful, as though they too sensed a change in the very air. The spirit raised a hand, calming the joyful noise. Its voice was gentle. Your choice made all the difference. I was but a guide. You are the ones who saved this city. By uniting, by refusing to let despair reign, you have driven out the darkness that threatened your home. Never forget the strength you wield when you stand together. With those words, the being's flames flickered. Then, slowly, it dissolved into flecks of golden light. Drifting away on the breeze, a hush fell as the last speck vanished, leaving only the afterglow of its presence on every soul gathered. Celia exhaled shakily, releasing the hands of her neighbors. Nobody spoke for a moment. The hush was broken only by the distant hum of traffic below and the far-off chirping of some bird awakened by the new calm. Finally, someone started to clap, and the applause spread, rising in a wave that seemed to echo the city's heartbeat. Everyone still felt that raw energy coursing through them, evidence that their combined spirit had truly accomplished something miraculous. In subsequent days, news outlets scrambled to explain the phenomenon. Meteorologists cited an abrupt disintegration of the superstorm's funnel. Government leaders awkwardly claimed that the swirling darkness had been more of an optical illusion or a freak microclimate event. But countless eyewitness reports, backed by shaky phone videos, circulated across the internet, fueling unstoppable interviews and debates. Some dismissed it as elaborate mass hysteria. Others claimed a religious miracle. Yet for all the varied interpretations, an undercurrent of intangible unity lingered in the city. People remembered how, for at least one night, they'd stood side by side, hearts open, driving back something monstrous. Over coffee breaks and dinner tables, families discussed how neighbors had visited them the next day, checking in on them. Community centers saw increased volunteerism. Strangers exchanged nods of acknowledgement in an unspoken agreement that they had all weathered something unearthly. Celia's editor was bombarded with outside pressure to run stories on the realm of possibilities, magical, supernatural or otherwise. And so, Celia found the paper receptive at last, when she wrote an article about the luminous guardian who had emerged from a high-rise billboard and rallied them to save their home. Her words captured what logic failed to convey. That hope is a force, intangible yet potent, capable of mustering unity among even the most jaded souls. Sometimes, Celia still caught a faint pulse of that electric spark within. She felt it when she talked to neighbors about block cleanups or donated her time at the local youth center. She felt it when dark episodes of personal doubt threatened to swallow her. Each time, the memory of that rooftop vigil came back, reminding her that despair feeds on solitude and hope thrives in community. Thanks to a glowing spirit that descended from a shining screen, the city had learned a lesson woven deeper than words. Faith, heart, and a shared purpose created a radiant shield no storm could destroy. Late one evening, a couple of weeks after the miraculous event, Celia ventured to the base of the original billboard. The usual advertisements still played on its massive display, and the sidewalk was once again busy with pedestrians rushing past. Earlier in the day, rumors claimed that someone had glimpsed a flicker of bright white among the swirling colors. Celia stood there, recalling the night she had first laid eyes on that glowing entity. She felt a tingle in her chest, that leftover spark stirring. Thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, just as it had that fateful evening. She glanced at the billboard and thought she saw, for the briefest instant, a familiar shape emerge, a figure of white flame nodding at her before vanishing again. A soft, grateful smile curved her lips. Deep down, she knew the spirit's presence would linger in the city, whether visible or not. Maybe it was watching over the restless hearts of millions, ready to flicker into being whenever despair threatened to tip the balance once more. And if that day came, Celia suspected its call to unity would resonate even further, more swiftly. After all, a city that had already faced an impossible darkness and won would never be the same again. Whatever new storms might come, they would face them together, hands intertwined, guided by the memory of that shining guardian who lit the night and helped them save themselves.